My name's Stephen Baldwin. I'm the writer and producer and director of the Lucy Sands six-part series, which set off as being just a standard, standalone proof of concept film, should we say, and it grew massively over the last 10 years with more and more research that came in. So Lucy's film came to me from a dream, which is strange. I know everybody thinks it's the weirdest thing ever, but I had this strange snippet of a dream which seemed to last 30 seconds maximum, but which went on to create the Lucy saga as such. And through that dream, I did a lot of research, and it sort of led me to the St Houses of Maryport, and with them being JPs of the family, they all went into the courts in Carlisle. And through the courts in Carlisle, I came across this one case which was called The Girl Under the Stones, and through that I found Lucy. And when I came to Workington to actually research a bit more, I came to look at where she'd been killed, and obviously there was nothing there. There used to be a tree there, a big rowan tree which was planted in her honour, and it was missing. So I'm walking around, looking around, couldn't find anything, turned around, and the scene that I saw in the dream, which was two bridges, a river, a road, and this sort of strange castle in the background, was Workington from Northside. So at that point I thought, all right, I want something strangely weird here. And so I researched further, and about 2 years later, my head was brimming with so much knowledge that I had to get it out there somewhere. And it was either write a book, which I've never done, or try and put it into a script, which I've also never done. and the script was the turning point for me, really, because the scripts, I was working on Paul Dark and a couple of other shows as extras, and I was seeing their script and thought, well, if they can do a script like this, I can do one. And that's what I did. And I started writing a script, and one night I spent 4 hours, after a lot of research, just got my head into the script, and within 4 hours I've written 26 pages. Threw the script out to a few people in Cornwall, because that's where I was living at the time, and all of a sudden I had a crew and cast of 39 people all willing to actually come on board. So that was back in 2018, and by the end of 2018 we'd done 4 or 5 shoots, including a steam train and railways and all sorts, which we'd booked for a ridiculous amount of £250 for a weekend. And so we filmed that, and it just grew and grew and grew until 80 days of filming, and 4 years later we ended up where we are, which is a 6-part series chronicling pretty much the aftermath of Lucy's life, where she'd been killed and buried and found, and how the whole town of Workington erupted into this chaotic scenario of people from all over England just coming in by trains just because they'd heard about this young woman being killed, wanted to see it, were buying souvenirs from peddlers on the streets who were selling leaves off plants from around where she'd been buried, because they were red leaves, and they said it's from the blood of Lucy that's caused these leaves to turn red. There were so many opportunists out there that they were making a fortune on it and selling all sorts. One shop in Workington caused a riot, and the police were involved, and they had to shut the shop down because they said, come and see, on a big sign outside, said, come and see the remains of Lucy and the grave of Lucy. And they just got a load of stones, thrown them in there and thrown it on top of the shop mannequin. And so everybody felt ripped off and cheated, so they were rioting outside the shop, so that got shut down. And it just erupted to the point where there were thousands and thousands of people in Workington, all sleeping on the streets, all risking being thrown in jail and charged for being vagrants, just because they wanted to come and see what was going on. And this was back in 1882. The whole thing went worldwide. It was amazing, really, for the time, because we only had telegraph, we didn't have social media. It went viral within 48 hours of the body being found. So that's Lucy's story as such. But what we're concentrating on here is naming the killers, because it still remains an open case. And nobody was ever charged. They brought somebody in to into the trial. We brought some through, but they never went through with the trial as such. It just ended abruptly as an open case, and he escaped legally and was shipped off to America and was never seen again in Cumbria. He did come back to England a few times, but never back to this area. So I'm not going to give out who he was, because that's giving too much information out, and we want you to see the series, of course. But yeah, we're naming him and we're naming the accomplice, who I found a tiny paragraph piece in a newspaper 10 years later, which stated he'd given a deathbed confession to a priest, but it wasn't admissible because it was to a priest and the priest wouldn't go in and testify. But that went and made the papers, just a tiny paragraph. So that's where I sort of put two and two together and came up with the actual four and got the two killers. And one was from Maryport, who was the one from Maryport was an accomplice, but the killer was from Workington. And the police had him, but they let him go. And there's a lot of circumstances behind why he was actually let go. And again, I can't really reveal those, but in the series it'll tell you. But through research, I had my eyes open and I couldn't believe how he'd got away with it, but he had, and how the papers never cottoned on, unless of course the papers were silenced, which is a possibility. Nobody knows. It's 142 years ago this next month. So it got buried. The story itself was lost in time for a long time, just like Lucy's grave. It's been lost because in Workington you've got in St John's Workington Church, all the gravestones were taken out in the 1960s and put against the wall. But Lucy's is missing, but we believe that Lucy's gravestone was broken in half and they pushed it forwards and just dropped it on the ground and grassed over it. But we know where her gravestone is through all the research we've done. It's a certain plot down there, and if you look for bluebells in St John's graveyard, you'll find a grave. It's the only one with bluebells in it because that's one of her favourite flowers, apparently. So yeah, I mean, the story itself is quite harrowing. It doesn't start well. It ends better. There's a lot of nobbling of witnesses going on. It's a total injustice, is the only word I can say about her. She just didn't get the justice she deserved because they let the person go. And now we're just out for justice for her at this moment in time. This is why we've done this, is to give her the justice she needs. So like I say, 80 days of filming. We filmed in Cornwall, filmed in Cumbria, filmed in Devon and filmed in London. And there's over 550 people involved in the whole series. It grew massively. And a couple of shire horses, the odd chicken here and there. We've had quite a few animals thrown in. Dogs on the beach. We were first company back as soon as lockdown ended. We had 120 people doing a market scene and doing a beach scene at Allenby. So we were the first people back on the 9th of September, I think it was 2020. So that was quite interesting. So my experience, my background in filming, it was sketchy. I was a costume designer for many years, about 30 years. But I wanted to get costumes on Poldark, and I thought the only way I can do that is to actually try and become an SA in Poldark itself. So I signed up to a couple of agencies in Cornwall. I did actually get onto Poldark, so I was chatting away there to the costume designers, the costume departments, and everybody else who was around. And I swayed. My mind got taken in by the actual filming of it all and how it works and all the background and behind the lens. And I steered away from what I originally went in for and got really, really involved in how it works, how the filming side of it works, what does a sound technician do, what do you do? Walking up to people and saying, Mr. Ramboard, what do you do? And they'd tell me, and they'd be really, really willing to give me information because they can only do one job on set and they get really bored. So I treated it like a university, and that snowballed from me doing Poldark, a couple of seasons of Poldark to a couple of seasons of Spanish Princess and Sanditon and other bits and pieces. And throughout like 2.5 years, I really got my head into how filming works and how the dynamics of every person in there works. So I knew after about 2.5 years, roughly how a film set worked, and decided, okay, I've got all this information, let's do a film, let's try and make something. So that's when Lucy came about and we started filming it. And when lockdown hit, obviously we couldn't do much because we had so many people involved. We weren't allowed on set with hundreds of people. So we really put quite a lot of it to rest at that point and waited till lockdown was out. Like I say, on the 9th of September, we were back in force. So 142 years later, which is a long time to wait for justice, we're actually at the point where everything's filmed. We're going through the editing stages of episodes 1 and 2 at the moment. We are crowdfunding as well for that, which has been quite successful. So we've got a lot of support from locals in Workington themselves, getting massive support from Helena Thompson Museum, and they've just really helped us push this forward. So we're looking at putting the first 2 episodes out privately in Workington, just around the corner from where Lucy lived on Christian Street, which is Helena Thompson Museum. We're going to do 4 screenings there of the first 2 episodes, plus a Q&A with me, of course, so people can grill me and find out more. And hopefully that's going to start the ball rolling for getting the final 4 episodes edited, finished, and in the can, as they say. And hopefully from there we should be able to sell the series, hopefully. I'm doing a trilogy, basically, which is called Silenced Voices, which is all about your 3 young women. Lucy was murdered. I've got another one which we're working on at the moment called Anne, and that's where she was a suicide victim. And the other one, which is a short, which I did to really thank the schools of Workington for allowing 2 of their massive schools to come out in force and be extras in the filming, especially in the church and in the riot scene we ran in Workington. And that one's entitled Kathy. Now, Kathy is a fictional character, but she comes from the inspiration of the photograph. And the photograph shows this young girl holding a hand out at the Carlisle hiring fair, looking as miserable as sin. And you can't help but feel sorry for her. You can't help but feel this empathy for this young girl who's selling herself off in servitude. And we don't know where she went from there. You've got 2 stern women at the side of her, handing her a shilling, which is the contract. And nobody knows where she's going from that point. And so I got an inspiration from that photograph. And I wanted to give her a story, a background story, something a bit more uplifting, but also historically factual, so that younger children, younger viewers in the schools, especially in Workington, could understand it. It could become part of their historical sort of teachings as such. So that's what we did. We wrote a 22-page script, filmed it in Cornwall, filmed it on site in Carlisle, and that was during lockdown we filmed that one. And we had the police out who came. We had lots of people coming around us asking us what we were doing and why we were doing it and how we were allowed to be doing it. And we were doing our job, and the police came, they questioned me, I showed them all my files and said, well, here's my COVID certificates, here's everything you need. And they said, right, you're fine, just go ahead and film. You're here for a day. I said, yeah. And we got away with it, no problem. They allowed us. So hats off to Carlisle Police for being so understanding and so damn good for us. So we shot this 22-minute short about Kathy, which sort of shows how she's arriving to the fair. So we've got a long journey where she's coming from, where she's having to walk on her own. She meets a friend, a young friend makes friends with her, and then they both parted at the market. She's taken off to one place, the other girl's taken to another. And it shows just the first few days of her life in servitude and how harrowing it must have been for her and how scary it must have been. But she wins people over. She's got a nice personality about her, which we gave to her. And she just wins over the household staff by being who she is and just being a little bit cheeky and a little bit forward, but she wins everybody over through who she is. So that's Kathy's story. It ends nicely. She just goes up through the ranks from being scullery maid to the next stages. And then obviously the year after, we see her at the end where she's no longer the scullery maid. She's now teaching the younger child to be the scullery maid. So it's got a nice sort of ending to it. It's a bit whimsical, but it was a nice thing to do during lockdown. And as a 22-minute short, it's just long enough for everyone's attention span, I think. I know a lot of our things are actually period drama because I love the Victorian era. Anne is set in Paris, so it's still a Victorian era, but I'm not certain what it is in French history, but it's still Victorian as we're working it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Victoriana, and that's how my house looks, that's how we live as such, and that's where my mindset is at the moment. So for me, period drama is quite an interesting thing. I love period drama, I love costume drama. So what we're working on really is, it's street level as such. We're always working, we don't go with the gentrification, although we do have to show some gentrification inside in what we're doing, but we don't concentrate on those like Downton Abbey do and the lives of the rich. We're concentrating on the lives of the poor, the downtrodden, the working class. So in Lucy's, for instance, she is working class. She's a maid and she's home because she's ill, and now she's going to go back, or she's talking about going back to Liverpool to go back into servitude again. And a whole of friends either work in the paper mill or they're working around Workington itself, just doing menial jobs. There's nothing glitzy about Lucy's story whatsoever. It is gritty. It's dirty. It's a mining town. It's a shipbuilding town. It's a steel town, and that's where we're at. Everything is gritty. It's street level. So if you're looking for glitz and glamour, we're not the people. This isn't where you're going to be looking for. However, if you're wanting something that's real, a real story which captivates and holds your attention, then Lucy's for you. And I would liken it to Bronte. I can't liken myself to literary greats like that, but it's along the lines of she wrote about life in the middle of nowhere, living in a cottage, in I've forgotten the name of it, Wuthering Heights. So in Wuthering Heights, she was, talking about street urchins being brought in, to be part of the family. Not great rich people, but they were caring. They were a family unit, and this is what Lucy's life was like. Also, her friends' lives were like. So if you like that kind of thing, then perhaps this series is for you. Also, Dickens, we've got the street urchins running around stealing from people on the streets. That kind of thing, that's where we're at with this. We're not trying to be glamour. We're not going for high costume. This is how people lived back in the 1880s, poor people. And I think it resonates with now because, the crisis of living, we're all struggling. Everybody's struggling to actually survive. Everyone's struggling on meager wages. And so I think it resonates from 140 years ago to now, but there's a lot of people in that situation that Lucy was in back then. Thankfully, less people are so vulnerable as Lucy. There are services there. We've got an NHS. You don't have to pay for a doctor. Everything's there now for us. But then it was bleak. It was bad. Yet they got on, and through being family units and being tight family units, they got on with one another. So yeah, if you like that kind of thing, then Lucy's going to be the series that you want to watch. So as I said earlier, we're running a fundraiser, which is crowdfunder for Lucy. So we've got enough to get the first 2 episodes completed. That's all post-production work. We've shot every scene we need to, so everything's done. So when you normally see people asking for backing, it's for an idea. It's for something they're pitching to you. It's something they've not filmed. It's something they've never shot, but they've got maybe a few ideas. They've got some sketches. They're going to come around and show you and expect you to put thousands of pounds in and risk your money on it. Whereas with us, it's totally different. We've got the products already shot. It's 80 days. It's £50,000 invested, and that's self-invested. So what we're looking at now is if anybody wants to help donate, we've got the screening going on in the Helen Thompson Museum on the 6th and 7th of July. We're selling tickets to those. There's 300 seats available, and this is exclusive worldwide. This isn't a cinema release. This is just us showing 300 people who are investing in the film by buying tickets from us what we've done and what's to come. And so that's where we're at the moment. We're trying to raise money. If anybody is interested in this, we've got a fundraiser going on Kickstarter, and there's lots of different rewards, from PDF scripts, original newspapers which we've had reprinted, which we used in the film. There's prop coins, which are original Victorian coins, all used in the film. All these things we're actually offering out as rewards for pledges. So pledges start from anything from £5 up to £2,500 for executive producers. And we've got a couple of people interested in exec producers, but we've got the lower level also as a producer on the, which one is it? Associate. We've got different levels of producer. So the lowest one is associate producer at £200. And what we're offering on this one is more, again, than you'll find from any other film. If we sell, the investor gets their money back plus 100%. So if you invest £200, you could, if this sells, come back with £400 in the long run. Same with the larger one, £2,500, we get you £5,000 back. But it's a risk. Everything's a gamble. But it's not as much a gamble as it would be with anybody else's because it's shot. It just needs the editing, it needs the post-production finishing, and we're there. And that's when we need an agent, get the agent to sell it, and hopefully we'll have it on screen somewhere by the end of the year.
She's in our eyes.
Look at her!
There's been horrible deeds done to her.
Lucy. Forgive me. It's a young woman.
Has he seen her? No one has.
She went missing.
John, it's definitely the work of a deranged mind.
Good afternoon, ladies. I'm Detective Inspector Isaac Bird from Whitehaven. The body, which was found on the north side this morning, has been identified.
What have they done with her?
They were stronger. In numbers, they were cunning, manipulative. But when Judgment Day comes, and I now know it will, their numbers won't help them, and I'll be waiting.
You were so certain that he was the killer. What's changed?
Lucy.
I want to hold her. It's her.
I'm going to ask you to think this through, Maggie. If you want to see justice served, you need to tell the truth.
Whatever happens, I love you.
He could quite easily walk free from that cell.
Whatever happens,